Hmm.
Oh, hello. Welcome to Badgerpod Nerdcast number 44. Why does TV suck? Or does it suck? It does. But we're going to talk about why. I'm your host, Brian Martinez, and I am joined by Allison, Otter Jesus, Hannah Wallen, Dr. Random Cam, or Moke Stephenson, and...
No, it's Stevenson, not Stephenson. Get it right.
And it's not Moke, it's...
and
Come on, Brian.
Rochelle Edwards. And yeah, that's everybody who's here. So we're going to talk about TV. And I'm going to start by handing the floor over to Allison because she has something she wants to propose to make TV less sucky. Allison.
Actually, I can't do it right now. Just give
Oh,
me.
you can't do it right now.
No, wait. Yes, maybe. Okay, all right. How to make TV less sucky? No, I don't have a proposal how to make TV less sucky. I had a drinking game.
Yeah, that makes it less sucky.
Because you're drunk.
Because you're
Okay,
drunk.
I see the logic now.
There's something to do.
All right. Okay. So anyway, my drinking game is thus: turn on the TV. It has to be not a specific channel like, Home Improvement or Food, because this generally doesn't happen in those channels, but like to a specific topic. But just turn on to regular TV any time of day. When a woman is a victim of a man, take a drink. You will probably be dead by the time you've watched an hour of TV. So if you don't want to die during this drinking game, you can change it to a woman is subject to a rape, attempted rape, or some sort of sexual violation. And then you'll probably be completely unconscious by the time an hour has gone by, but you won't be dead. So there you go. Do it. Turn on the TV and just test this. Test how long before you take a drink, before a woman is portrayed as a victim of some guy, or a woman is raped. Because I have done this multiple times now. I'll turn the TV on. It's like within 30 seconds. I turn the news on. It's within 30 seconds. And it's like, I can't watch this. I don't have that gland in my brain that makes watching a woman scream enjoyable. It's mostly just nails on a chalkboard. And it's like, why am I watching this? This is the most...
Yeah.
Can you explain why 99% of women want to watch women scream on TV? Like, what am I missing in my brain that this doesn't appeal to me? What am I missing that I just want to turn it off the moment
You
I
don't
see
like being appalled, Allison. You don't like just watching something to be appalled and say, oh my gosh, I'm so offended. Oh my gosh, I can't believe this is going on in the world. That's how pretty much my mom watches pretty much everything.
Outrage, addiction,
Yes.
rampant in America today, I can tell you that.
Well, I guess
This is
that's
why
it.
we have comedy and tragedy. This is why we have two, different sides of a coin, and they're both healthy in a decent balance. And this is what happens when you get a bunch of people who only know how to do tragedy, because they take themselves far too fucking seriously to do any comedy.
But the best comedy also, best tragedy also includes comedy. It's the most poignant.
Yeah,
Not when it's on TV. It just involves women getting constantly victimized.
Yeah, but it's like, I guess you're right, Rachel, that's it. I just lack the outrage gland, because for me, and this is probably a dark part of myself, all I want to do is slap the woman. It's like, you
Well-
know, you fuck, you did,
It's
you
not
did.
going to be taken out of context at all.
No, why should I want to watch a woman who's such a pathetic weakling? Like, seriously. Take matters into your own hands. And do something.
You know the worst example of this? I don't know if there's an equivalent in Canada, but in the U.S. there's this channel called Lifetime Television for Women. And it is the most,
Oh.
like, every fucking show on that channel. That is, every movie they play, every like television series they have a man who is like the bad guy type, the abusive, manipulative, domineering, angry, every stereotype you can think of, evil man, and this woman who is just completely overwhelmed and completely victimized and constantly put upon by this guy's behavior, and then throughout the entire show, she plays this, I am so strong because I am suffering and I haven't died from it yet. But she never really does, great things to solve the problems. And then all of a sudden, somehow at the end, she's victorious through no fault of her own. And somehow that's because she's great. And it's like every story on Lifetime, or there's the bizarre tragedy like the Face on the Milk Carton. I think I actually watched that one all the way through, but yeah, every single one of them is that level of drama where it's like enough drama to make you nauseous during the show, and then at the end of it, there's the success doesn't really have anything. The victory doesn't really have anything about it to make you proud of the person, the character that was victorious.
Well, usually they're saved by some guy who's the savior figure. But thank you for that insight, Irving Snot Pockets.
Yes, I now identify as Irving Snot Pockets. We've been taking ourselves too seriously for too long. Down with seriousness. I stand with Irving.
But in all seriousness, Lifetime channel is fucking terrible. Really, just do not ever watch that. But do you want me to do the reading?
Here's a great explanation of it. Real good explanation of it. When I was messed up on steroids, and my emotions were so out of whack that I got diagnosed wrongfully with bipolar disorder, and the diagnosis lasted until I was no longer. I loved that channel. That was like my favorite channel. When the steroids wore off, I was like, what the fuck am I watching?
Yeah, Rachel,
Yes.
Go ahead. By the way, Oxygen is also a really bad channel.
Yes, it's really. Let's just put it this way: you have soap opera levels of melodrama about these. Anyway, I'm just gonna read what I'm gonna read.
Do the read.
Gonna do the reading. So, what killed television for me? What killed television for me? 2 words: reality television. When this genre first hit in 2000, I avoided it like the plague that it is. But how could I know that it was not anything more than a novelty? Back then, we still had some decent cartoons on television, and my all-time favorite, educational documentaries. My childhood was built on those things. I loved the Discovery Channel so much that for most of high school, I planned to be a marine biologist and to make new discoveries about life in the ocean. But shit happens, and like my dreams of being a scientist, nature and historical documentaries died a slow, painful death. Slowly but surely, reality television crept onto every channel, replacing everything I love about television with stories of weird people with strange occupations. The History Channel has gone from, hey, let's talk about World War II, to, hey, let's talk about the possibility of aliens. National Geographic Channel has gone from being informative educational television to being about people making uncommon life decisions. I used to go out of my way to not miss a special documentary on these channels like Walking with Dinosaurs, Shark Week, and the various documentaries on unearthing tombs in Egypt. I lived for stuff like that, and now we've condemned future generations to watch Duck Dynasty and Ancient Aliens. No, fuck this shit. I want my documentaries back. I want my sitcoms with decent writing with characters that I can get invested in. I want cartoons that are good and aren't just one giant push towards a political agenda. But all of that's gone because far too many people decided that stupid shit like Keeping Up with the Kardashians was a good idea because reality TV is easy and cheaper to make. All that I love about TV is gone from regular cable. And the rest I can watch online. And this is how the internet will kill television and stand atop its bloodied corpse. Mic drop.
Oh, it's happening, friends. I mean, have you seen the viewership numbers in between, like, I think 18 to 45? I think that's the demographic. We don't watch TV, and we watch TV less and less each year. So eventually, when the people who actually watch TV shuffle off of this mortal coil, there'll be nobody watching TV except the people who create it, which is going to be interesting. Yes, indeed.
I'm going to disagree, though. I think that what's going to happen is that what's going to happen is finally people are going to have the thing that they've always wanted, which is the ability to choose which channels and which televisions they receive. And that's what's going to happen to television, is people are finally going to have these decisions in their hands, and that's going to kill the need for cable altogether. Everything's going to move online. It's inevitable. And
you use your computer as your television, your TV
Yes.
cable box.
But is that really television? Like,
I know exactly. That's the thing. It's killing. It's going to kill television because it makes things more accessible. It's done what the cable companies have failed to do, and basically they package all of these channels together because they want you to buy them. It's bundling, and in doing so, they have taken the choices out of the hands of the consumers and put them into the cable companies, and all of that is going to fall like one big house of cards, which is a great show on Netflix.
before I let Brian get in here, I just want to say one thing. That's not TV. Being able to choose whatever you want isn't really the medium that TV is. TV is sitting down on a couch and sitting there for 6 hours. I don't know how anybody can do it. My problem is the instant a commercial comes on, I forget what the hell I was watching and I wander away. But that's TV. TV is a complete lack of choice in a visual stream, and you're just sitting there absorbing it for however long you stand there.
I don't know, I never watched for that long. But yeah, TV has a lot less choices than the internet. But the thing is, most of the networks now have their own. They all have their own websites. Most of them have at least some of their shows online. Some of them have all of their shows online, and they got their own commercials.
All right, Brian.
So I'm looking at the history of the way that we entertain ourselves with television and where it was, where it is, and maybe where it's going. And there we are, like, I think are on the cusp of a really dramatic shift in the way that we watch entertainment, because of the internet, computers, and cable. But I'm thinking about, because you were mentioning, what television was and how it differs from the internet, cable, Netflix, and those kinds of things. See, when I was a kid, and cable didn't really exist in the way that it does now at all. Like, I remember when On TV and Spectrum had first shown up, and they were basically the earliest cable that I can remember. But you had to be somebody with money to have that, so we didn't have access to it. But the way that television was, and it might have been because there weren't really a lot of other options, it was set up, with basically different times of the day offer different kinds of shows, depending on, the networks decide, or they were looking at who's home, around this time or whatever, and it all made sense. It's pretty, and they still do things that way, right? Like, if I go to a laundromat, when I go to the laundromat, I usually go during the week and I have to wash my clothes. So it's like noon, and there's TVs, and they're always showing daytime shows and soap operas and Steve Harvey and Maury Povich. So I know that the target audience are people who are unemployed, underemployed, or maybe like stay-at-home parents. Usually women, but not necessarily. And then, of course, when I was a kid, when I would get home from school, there would be after-school cartoons. And then there might be nighttime, like primetime programming that was, some channels had stuff that was strictly for the adults, or at least adults would get more out of. And then there were shows that were for the family, like sitcoms and stuff. And they still do things like that. And then as you go later into the night, you get your news and all that. But one of the things that I really miss, and that I think about, which is one of the reasons why I think we wanted to have this show, was there used to be a lot more variety in your choices on network television. So some shows were, for, like, I remember I got to watch most of the 007 movies at home on TV. And we would do it as a family. Like, we would actually plan, to all sit around the television, and we'd have dinner, in front of the TV, and we'd all be there, maybe under our blankets or whatever, watching the show. And it'd be something for my mom, and she would get something out of it, I would get something out of it, my dad would get something out of it. It was a different animal in terms of our social interaction with television. back then. Plus, we also used to get shows that were, I think, a lot smarter than the shows we get now on network television. I'm not talking about cable, and I think I know why things like cable and Netflix have sort of adopted where the better television is. It's because there's more money there. But I wonder if there isn't something else too. You know, like I mentioned this many times when we had conversations outside of this. I remember watching The Twilight Zone, Outer Limits, you know, smart shows, the old Star Trek. I love Lucy. Like some sitcoms that were in many ways, you know, they're relatively well, I mean, I dare to say it, but they're relatively conservative, or at least put together in such a way that you didn't really see it as a I don't know, like it was just there for entertainment, or maybe it had like there were certain moral things that were being said, you know, like when you would watch Growing Pains or Different Strokes or whatever. I don't know that we get it in the same way. I think like what there seems to be an obsession with now are things like cop shows like Law and Order, or the Special Victims Unit, or any of those other detective, the what is it, NCIS and CSI and stuff, and they all feel the same, or like Grey's Anatomy, or like these, you know, these kind of things that focus on what seem to be like just kind of like cheesy drama, and they're just really bad, and they actually do some strangely tropish stuff in their own way. Like Allison mentioned the drinking game, you know, where, you know, take a drink every time you see a woman as a victim of a man, or a victim in general. And I think I would also add to that as something else I see a lot too, is where you have shows that might center around a woman, and she would be the most brave and the most you know, intelligent and the most courageous in the face of sexist, you know, sexism, like the most noble, enlightened character on the show. There was I'm gonna stop after this, but I saw there was a show. It was like a mini series, and it was about a woman who was a soldier that went to the Middle East and somehow got separated or kidnapped or ended up as a POW or something behind enemy lines, and it was about her courageous and brave journey back to her family. And there's like a shot of like, you know, shots of like her stay-at-home husband that's like waiting for her to get back. And I would, you know, at one point, like once upon a time, I might have found that to be interesting, but it just made me groan, because I knew that it was just going to be it was just going to come across as this really heavy-handed pandering propaganda stuff. And I feel like I'm just seeing that shit all the time. Yes, it's called American Odyssey, and it was just like, just groan-worthy. And it's not that I wouldn't want to see a show with a female lead in it. I'm fine with it, but there's a way to do it that makes it feel natural, and there's stuff that just feels like just forced. And that just looked like it was just going to be. Plus the fact that most of the time when it comes to war stories, we're supposed to not like them. We're supposed to shit on them. But in this case, we're supposed to celebrate it. Like, why are we holding it to this double standard? Anyway, I'm going to let Allison respond to what I was saying.
Well, the other thing that I find about TV now is it's really about the spectacle. Like, they shove so much drama, so much distorted drama into their shows just to keep people's attention, because nobody. Yeah. And I miss those. I actually do miss those TV shows that were hopeful. You know, and they had a quality to them that was innocent and hopeful, and that you don't really see that anymore. It's all people screwing each other over in the most horrible, despicable ways, and it's unpleasant to watch.
Or you know, like when I was talking about smarter shows, like shows that were like science fiction shows that were really science fiction-y, like where you would like be thinking about shit when it was over, like the concepts or the ideas, instead of it's a soap opera that happens to take place on a spaceship. Those, I can't stand that shit. Like, I mean, it can exist, that's fine, but it's so droll. I'm ready for something smarter. Like, there was a show called Almost Human. It was about android cops in this one future. And it got canceled prematurely, but I thought it was really fucking good. And the one thing it wasn't doing was it wasn't turning into a soap opera that takes place in the near future. You know? I don't know.
Okay, I'm gonna get my thing out now because I know that the otter is chomping at the bit to rape a seal.
And
So
so was I because I was going to...
okay, but what I think I understand what Brian is saying is that there is this cloying political correctness that is sort of sweeping the networks, where they have to write within a very, very narrow focus, and it's destroying shows. It's like almost like a cancer, and it's just eating TV from the inside out. This political correctness. And the only shows that I think are getting away with it are ones that are superficially adhering to that line while basically trolling everyone, like the audience, the press, and by getting through a message that's on almost a subtext. And that's interesting to me. That's an interesting phenomenon. Okay, all right, Andrew. All right, go ahead. Take it away.
Okay. One of the issues about, like, one of the things about TV that I like so much is that it's about ongoing stories where it could go on technically forever, but I like serialized storytelling because it makes me think of comic books and how, like, it can keep going on. Unlike with movies, where movies are a different medium, and when movie people come in and try to do TV shows, it sometimes there's like, they get screwed up with what they're trying to do because they're trying to be like all cinematic, but it's really, TV shows are a writer's medium. Movies are a director's medium that writers are important in, but the writers are in charge of TV. That's why I like TV so much, because it really always comes down to the writing. But then there's the fact that with network television, it's free. Like, you don't have to pay for it, unlike in England where they have to, like, buy a license to watch television, which is just bizarre. And they're basically paying for the programs that they watch.
You have to pay to have a television, never mind watch it.
Oh, whatever, that's what I... it doesn't make any sense to me. But with network television, it's free, so when people complain about it, I'm like, well, it's free. But even with it being free, you're still, like, the money that they're getting from programming is coming from the advertisements. They're getting the money from advertising people, which complicates everything. But even then, with all these different, with the complications and how we're getting it for free, there still does end up that there's still programs that are actually good that come out. But then the problem is that people don't watch it, or well, not the people, like the people who are in the Nielsen families who nobody's ever met, who are probably dead. They don't actually watch a lot of these programs that a lot of other people like, because I don't know why, they're weird. I just assume they all died while watching CBS, and their skeletons are just sitting there with the channel on all the time, because somehow that channel gets so many viewers. But even then, like, it's really complicated. People like to oversimplify it, and it's like, well, it's just bad or something. I'm not saying necessarily you guys are saying that, but there are people who are just like, network television sucks. But it doesn't suck. It's just different and weird, and that's why I like it. I love network television. There's always at least 2 or 3 shows every season, new shows, that I will end up liking, and then might get canceled. But there's like Hannibal was a show that was on network television, then it was canceled, still airing. That's actually a really good show, at least the early seasons. I don't know about the latest season, it's getting weird. Then there was like a show like Pushing Daisies, which was canceled after 2 seasons. Terminator Sarah Connor Chronicles, which is like the superior continuation to Terminator. But point is, it got canceled.
Was it canceled? Okay, all right.
Yeah.
Do you sense a theme here?
Okay, the problem with that thinking is every show will end up getting canceled or end. Do you think a show should go on forever? I mean, Pushing Daisies actually ended up having kind of a conclusion to it. When they found out they were canceled, they threw together some money and did like a wrap-up thing that kind of wrapped it up. Even with Terminator, the Sarah Connor Chronicles, in the end, obviously the creator's like, this was not a finale, a series finale. It does have this sort of sense of conclusion where it's like, okay, this story is ended. now a new story could happen, but whatever. And that's and another problem is when creators, when like the networks are like, oh yes, we're probably going to renew it. It's okay to do a cliffhanger, and then they don't renew it. That happened with Angel, which is very frustrating. Joss Whedon was very upset about that. But Joss Whedon, blah blah blah. Anyways, so I don't even know what I'm saying. But what I'm saying is something, and that's a thing.
You're saying that you like network TV, and you have given a bunch of examples of shows that you really liked.
Well, I could give more, but I'm not going to.
But they've been canceled, basically.
Cancelled.
No, what? Everything gets canceled. Even like
Well,
one of the
not everything gets canceled. Everything eventually comes to a close, but it doesn't necessarily get closed abruptly. And
sometimes
that's
it ends up it ends or whatever because people are like, I don't want to be on the show anymore. Or
I understand that there's situations where people are like, okay, well, we've gone on for so long, let's end it. But I think what's going on right now is people are actually moving towards shows that instead of have an indeterminate runtime, are shows that have a story that has a finite length, that has a specific story that needs to be told, and it's told over however many seasons it's going to take to tell that specific story.
Well,
and those shows end up being the better shows overall because they don't need they're not going to overstay their welcome. They're going to tell the story that needs to be told and then be done with it. But I think that the real problem that we're seeing here is that we're seeing a move from television, from the medium of television, or what we're talking about in terms of network shows. The ones that are successful are now not being watched when they come on. They're being watched online. They're being streamed, and those things are not being logged as much into the overall
I need to respond to that,
rating system, and because of that, because they're not taking that internet audience as seriously, you see these shows drop off. They get canceled because they think, oh well, people are not nearly as interested in this as they are in The Bachelorette or some other show that gets a whole bunch of ratings because it's a huge, big fucking spectacle.
I need to respond to that really quick. Wait, Allison, what were you gonna say?
Well, respond to it. Go ahead.
Okay, the thing is, Rachel, that's not actually true. They actually are taking online audiences and streaming seriously, but in the end, they can't take it and go, we're just going to go by this, because they have to go by the people watching the actual programming that they believe based on the really stupid rating system. The rating system is a problem. Anyways, they do take it seriously. Hulu actually counts. If you're watching stuff on Hulu, you're being counted within the viewing audience. If there were like tons and tons of people watching a program on Hulu during the time period that you need to watch it, that would really help with shows. But then a lot of people are like, I'm not watching Hulu because commercials. And then Netflix also is really helpful because the CW actually goes, okay, what programs do we have that are doing well on Netflix? Okay, this is doing well. Let's renew it. They actually do that. It's with Hulu as well. The CW is really into that because of the fact that like barely anybody watches the CW.
Then why are these shows getting canceled? Then why are these great shows, which are really well written and have a lot of potential, getting canceled? And then you look at other shows on the network that are pretty much shit, but they're all spectacle. Why are those in particular? Why do they get to stay?
I need you to give me a couple examples, and I can try to respond to them then. Because you're just saying, why do these and these, and you're not saying any, which one.
Well, you've already mentioned several shows that were canceled.
Here's examples that I can think of shows that were canceled that were really good, but they were actually given a chance, specifically with like the CW. Nikita was given a final sort of mini-series to wrap it up, even though they wanted to cancel it. Because they're like, we like this show, we know people like it, we're going to wrap it up, give it an ending. And that was really cool. They also ended up doing that sort of with Heart of Dixie, where they allowed the writers to wrap it up. That when the networks will actually go, okay, we're going to cancel it, you have time, though, to wrap up the series and give it a conclusion. one of the things that it seems like people don't like about it's canceled is because they ended the story or they didn't finish it. There's a cliffhanger, but sometimes the show gets canceled, but they're able to actually wrap it up. It's just it's incredibly difficult with everything where they're like working on multiple episodes throughout a series, and there's a writer's room and everything. There you have plans, but sometimes the networks just aren't good at communicating with.
Well, right now, for the context of this conversation, we're talking about something that gets canceled, maybe after one season, or far too soon. We're not talking about a show that has a couple seasons and you feel like, oh, well, it had a bit of a run, and now it's just not doing particularly well because maybe we moved the time slot. We're not talking about that. We're talking about this happened very abruptly. Like, I lost Constantine after one season, which was they didn't even do a full season. They did half a season because they didn't have a lot of confidence in the show, but it was it was actually really good.
Okay. The thing about that is the networks don't have to go, this show, people might think the show is good, but it's not getting enough viewers, so let's waste money and just keep pushing the show. Advertisers aren't going to want that. Advertisers sometimes, if they did that, like started really doing that, and shows were like no one was watching it according to the Nielsen ratings, advertisers would want to pull out. They wouldn't want to spend money on that. So if you have a problem, it's with the advertisers and them wanting people to see their advertisements.
Well, I think there's an additional problem, because what we're experiencing is sort of an audience rot, like what you were saying, Rachel. I mean, the audience is heavily older women, and older women seem to be just fascinated by being offended or horrified or like taking offense and outraged by things, and also this ridiculous drama. So what we're seeing is that TV is essentially skewing towards the tastes of older women, and these are the tastes of older women. Bachelorette, and I don't know what the appeal of Mad Men is, but apparently that was also appealing too. But that's the way it's going. And until they start to actively court people who aren't going to die in 20 years, by the way, TV producers, your audience is going to die in 20 years. Does that not frighten you? Don't you think you should start courting people like us who aren't going to die in 20 years, who are still going to be around spending money in 20 years?
I could very easily be dead in 20 years.
Well, yeah, you could be Mike, or you could be a pickled zombie. And just be like Keith Richards and never die. You're all the things that you ingest are just making you strong.
Quite a lot of heroin.
Oh gosh.
Yeah, it's like they could just make you strong, make you invincible,
Are you trying to kill Mike? Because this is how you kill Mike.
No, I'm not trying to kill Mike. I'm trying to. I don't know.
Well, I wanted to ask
Mike ghosts, because this is how you get Mike ghosts.
Okay, all right.
One quick. Well, I was gonna.
No, I don't want to kill Mike.
I was gonna say one quick point though to what you were saying. You were talking about. Well, you know where the sitcoms have gone? I'll tell you exactly where the sitcoms have gone. They've moved to things like Disney Channel and Nickelodeon, and they do it on the cheap, and it sucks ass. Like all the family dramas, the stuff where you're supposed to be all the corny, the corny chaste sort of situations where you're supposed to learn something at the end, and it's really, really badly written out. It's terrible.
That's not about network television, though.
It's grating on the nerves. What I'm saying, well, yes, it is.
Still very popular on network television. CBS has those really shitty sitcoms that are super cheap to make.
Saying where a good portion of the family ones, the cheesy ones that we used to that resemble a little bit closer to what we were talking about. That's what I mean. That's where the sitcoms have gone, and they're really cheaply done, and they're terrible.
All right. I'm gonna pop in. Thank you, Rachel, for that information. I'm gonna let Otter Jesus address the demographics really quick, and then I want we're gonna give it to Hannah, and because we all have lots of opinions about this. But go ahead.
Okay. So ABC is a channel that targets women. They do. That's their goal. That's like the company. They're like, we know that's what we're doing. Fox targets like younger audiences and sort of younger male audiences. The CW used to target young women or like teenage girls, but they've also started sort of targeting young teenage guys as well, and yeah, then CBS targets old people. Yeah, and am I missing out? ABC, no, ABC.
NBC.
NBC doesn't know who they're targeting anymore.
Okay.
They used to have a target audience, but now they don't know what they're doing, and that's why they're doing a lot of different shows. Like they never would have done Constantine normally. They never would have done Hannibal normally, but they ended up doing them. Also Grimm, like ended up doing these shows because they were looking for an audience. Grimm ended up finding an audience and is doing really well, and NBC is really proud of that show. So yeah, there's the demographics to keep in mind, because like Allison was saying that I think it was Allison who said this, like the network TV is just targeting like older women, and that's really not necessarily true. ABC is, and technically CBS is, because older women are part of the older people demographic. But yeah.
All right. Hannah, did you want to say anything? Because I got my name in the queue, but I want to know. I want to give you the opportunity.
Well, she has a
I was
reading.
gonna say, did you want to respond before?
The only thing I would say is I think that all networks, they may have like a focus or maybe something that they're better at, but I think at the end of the day, all the networks, they want to get as many people as they possibly can. And you can tell, because if you watch television during the day, every channel is going to have reality TV, talk shows, and soap operas. All of them are going to have that in some capacity. So they're all trying to get whoever's available at that moment. But what I think is really changing is the thing that Allison was saying. First off, you have a rot in the audience, like in terms of their tastes, because that's how going to look at cable is almost like looking at the canary in the coal mine, because cable channels are most often they're a focus, right? They're like specialized. Network TV gives you whatever it needs, whatever it's trying to fill for any given point of the day. But a cable channel like Discovery, Animal Planet, Sci-Fi, MTV, VH1, all of those, and History Channel, they're all trying to do something specific. They used to actually do that. MTV used to show music videos. VH1 started showing music videos when MTV stopped showing music videos. Then Discovery Channel was all like science fiction, science documentary stuff, learning things. You had like stuff that they were trying to give you. Like the History Channel would talk about history. Now all of those channels either do some form of reality television, really dumbed down shows. Like Sci-Fi used to be like the good sci-fi shit, and now it's all like Sharknado 5 and I don't know, just stuff that's like semi-related to geek culture.
No, Sharknado is fine, Brian.
What?
Sharknado is fine. The problem is all of the vampire shit. Like,
well, yeah, or like
I love this man who's a blood-sucking monster. Like that shit. That is what's killing it.
Right. It's getting away from what. Like, when I didn't have cable, but when I would be at a friend's house and we would turn on Sci-Fi Channel, it would be because we wanted to watch Star Trek, Babylon 5, or one of those shows that for most people, they might find it a little bit boring, because basically it deals with science fiction in a really kind of like highbrow way. I don't want to like sound too hoity, but that was the point of cable, was you got to choose. Some people wanted to sit down and learn about World War II planes on History Channel. Some people wanted to veg out in front of the TV and just see like Pink Floyd music videos for like 2 hours. Now you can't do any of those things because all of those channels are filled with reality TV and essentially trying to appeal to as many people as possible that even have remote interest in what that channel specialized in. So if you were someone who just liked to eat sometimes, then they would have, like, who doesn't? The Food Network, when it used to show you how to cook, now it shows, yeah, they still have some cooking shows, but then there's all these things about, like, here's a guy who goes to different places and eats the biggest meals, and, these things that are just kind of dumb, and they don't really, like, the real world ruined television. That's what I think it was where it started. But
Cops is where it started.
Yeah, I think the real world was basically the beginning of the end. And
Cops was started because of the original writers strike, and they needed programming that didn't need writers.
I think it was Survivor, because Survivor, the real was a thing for a while, but it was just its own little thing on MTV, and it didn't just kind of creep into other places. Survivor was the thing that made reality TV mainstream, because you're like, oh my god, are these guys gonna fucking die on this island? Holy shit! And I was avoiding this because I was like, this is stupid, like really stupid, and I had better stuff to watch, like Walking with Prehistoric Beasts was in the same time slot, I think. Anyway, but that's the whole thing. I think a lot of the reality television stuff is to blame, and now instead of actually doing even sitcoms or dramas, what they do is they just kind of merge the genres in with reality television, where they actually script the stuff, but they give the illusion that this is actually somebody's life.
Do you remember when a talk show like Oprah or Phil Donahue would have a guest on that actually has something to say, and then they would talk about it? And now the talk shows are all just like rednecks fighting over who's daddy, who's the daddy of somebody's kid. This is basically what's happened with daytime talk television.
All right, I'm gonna get in here. I want to say something to the demographic issue. There are going to be more of women, I think, like us, coming up through the generations. Where there's not going to be less. There are going to be more, and that means that the typical schlock with the outrage is not going to sell anymore. You got to find something else, and I'll give you some clues if you're a TV producer listening to this. I really like the idea that I'm being trolled, that there's a cleverness going on with a TV program, and that the creative team is self-aware and shit-posting. I like that. I like to be part of something that seems subversive, and I think there is a lot of women out there like me who prefer to be challenged than outraged. Now I'll just leave it at that.
Okay.
So, all right, are you guys ready for me to rant?
Go,
Yes,
Hannah!
do it, Hannah. Take it away.
All right, so I don't have a lot formally written here. Like, I basically have some basic stuff and some bullet points. I start with, I don't think my experience with television growing up was the same as everybody else's, because my mom had this idea that it was an evil thing that destroyed your mind. So like she was one of those parents, to the point where when MTV came out in 1982, or at least showed up in our area in 1982, she was one of the parents in our neighborhood that actually went to the city, because the city had an agreement with Warner Cable at the time, with what channels were going to be packaged what way for the utility, and got it arranged so that MTV was optional. It was not part of your basic cable package. And it was that was like a really big victory for the television is bad parents. And to be honest, I watched Headbangers Ball, but I really didn't much like the rest of MTV. So you guys can all shoot me for that if you want. But my experience with television was very limited in some ways. Like and I don't hate it because of this. Like there's a lot I don't have any interest in. I was never allowed to sit in front of the TV and veg when I was a kid, unless I was so sick that I would like doze off in between. So I rarely watched very much where I was just sitting and watching TV, except for Saturday morning cartoons, and that was special. And that's when I was a little kid, cartoons were on for a little bit after school and on Saturday mornings, and that was mostly it. And the rest of the time there wasn't a lot of cartoon type programming. But I was like, if my dad was watching TV and I was in the room with him doing other things and not, where the television wasn't my activity, I didn't get kicked out of the room. So, and if I was at my grandparents' house, my grandparents didn't have the same attitude as my mother did towards television. So I watched TV with them, but the television they watched, of course, was old people TV, and it wasn't the old people TV that you see today. So I watched a lot of stuff, like I watched Taxi and MASH and Hogan's Heroes. I don't know if everybody's heard of, there was a show called WKRP in Cincinnati. It was about a radio station. Used to watch that. And there was a guy on that show.
I loved that show.
The driest sense of humor on television at the time. I mean, and like this is all stuff. This kind of stuff that shaped my sense of humor when I was growing up. I watched Chips, Happy Days, Welcome Back, Kotter. That was one of my favorite shows that I could get away with watching because my dad watched it. Watched Laverne and Shirley.
I gotta point it out. Family Ties also had a really good dry sense of humor.
Yes, I used to watch that with my dad. And of course, I had a huge crush on Michael J. Fox as a kid. But yeah, that was the kind of stuff that I could get away with watching because I was in the room and my dad was watching it, and I was doing other things, and not technically not watching television. Watched a lot of MASH. MASH was probably one of my dad's favorite shows when I was growing up, and Hogan's Heroes. So I watched those. In fact, I have I've got a couple of Hogan's Heroes DVDs that I bought just for nostalgia because I loved watching that with my dad, just sitting and watching that with my dad. And then, of course, we watched a lot of sci-fi stuff. We watched Star Trek, Outer Limits, Twilight Zone. And then at my grandparents', it was the mystery shows, Murder, She Wrote, Matlock, Perry Mason, game shows, Jeopardy. And what else? They didn't watch The Price is Right. Like that show, that show can put me to sleep. But it was all stuff like that. And then when I got to pick what I was going to watch, a lot of times it was, television time shared with my brother and all the boys in the neighborhood. And I really, I didn't take an interest in necessarily a whole lot of the girly shows, except Punky Brewster and Charlie's Angels. But I watched things like The Incredible Hulk, Justice League, Spider-Man, G.I. Joe, lots of kids' cartoons, Transformers. I think there was a Ninja Turtles show on when we were kids. That might have been when we were older.
Dukes of Hazzard.
Yeah, Dukes of Hazzard. We used to watch the Dukes of Hazzard. Stuff like that. And it was stuff. A lot of it wasn't stuff that you saw every night. Some of it was on. I think the Hulk was only on once a week. I watched Wonder Woman once a week. Stuff like that. Never anything where we got really caught up in it. If you missed an episode, you weren't falling behind. It was no big deal, And yeah, we had the toys. We had a Hulk toy that we had to return because it got recalled because of the stuff inside it was toxic. You could stretch it. It was like Stretch Armstrong, but it was a Hulk. So that was the kind of stuff we watched. And it wasn't this stuff. It wasn't necessarily I wouldn't call it necessarily intellectual the way Discover Channel was intellectual when it first came out. But a lot of this stuff had underlying. There was a level of thought to it. You could tell that the writers really put themselves into these shows. Another good one, Taxi. Taxi. The writing in that show, the humor was. I don't know how to explain it if you don't watch the show. The humor was so varied depending on which character you were dealing with. The characters were so individual and so different from each other. So I don't want to call them deep because it was a comedy show, but there was a lot to that show. You couldn't just call it a sitcom. Yeah, Barney Miller's another one that was like that. You couldn't just call it a sitcom. All of these shows, and they weren't. Some of them had preachy moments, like Chips could get preachy, and Happy Days could get preachy, but they weren't social justice warrior, you suck if you don't believe this way preachy. They were this is what we think and we want you to think about it preachy. And there was a complexity to it. You didn't come away feeling like if you disagreed with the themes or the conclusions of the show that there was something wrong with you. Another good one for that was Different Strokes. And some of these shows approached issues that I don't think today they could deal with without people taking them the wrong way. Different Strokes had an episode that was basically a television show length warning about stranger danger, where the boys in the show came home and told their guardian about a man who wanted to shower with them, a bunch of times, and he had to explain to them in terms that you would explain to a child why this was not okay and why they were allowed to tell him no and they should come to an adult when they were uncomfortable talking and stuff like that. And the way it was approached was very sensitive and very very reasonable and matter of fact. And it was similar to the sort of sensible nature with which Sesame Street approached the death of Mr. Hooper. Which I didn't see the original of that because that happened before I was born, but the public television network in my area replayed Sesame Street episodes a couple of years after the fact, and so there were two Sesame Streets on during the day. There was the earlier and the later, and the later in the day version was from a couple of years earlier. And so I think I was about maybe 3 years old when I saw the episode where Mr. Hooper died, which totally explained to me why in the morning shows he wasn't there, and in the afternoon shows he had been. But the way that it was approached was very matter of fact. It didn't try to give anybody a, oh, you must believe this religious thing, even though it was run by religious people. And it didn't try to leave children with this bubblegum idea of what death is. It basically attempted to give the children something positive that they could take away from the situation. Well, yeah, he's gone, but we can remember him. And our memories are important to us, and that's, it's okay to be sad, but we can always value our memories. And it was one of those things, you just don't see that kind of approach in television today. It's not that intuitive. It's not that that thinking, and I guess that's one of the things I really miss about television from when I was a kid. I started out watching television. My parents had not gotten a color TV yet. It wasn't. I mean, this was like color TVs had been around for a while. My parents were just both school teachers, so they didn't have a lot of money. So we had this little black and white, small screen black and white TV. And I watched, as a very little kid, I watched things like Sesame Street and the Electric Company and this 15-minute show sponsored by the Ohio Board of Education called Dragons, Wagons, and Wax that probably nobody else on the show has ever heard of. Stuff like that. I watched a lot of the stuff on television, on the public television network. And you had 13 channels. 3 of them were UHF channels that didn't actually necessarily always come in. And then the other 10 were channels. They were network channels, but at least 2 of the networks were duplicated. So you really didn't have 10 network channels. You had like 6 network stations on 10 network channels, because you had like Fox out of Fort Wayne and Fox out of Dayton and Fox out of Toledo, and usually 2 of those would come in my area. So there wasn't a lot to choose from back then, and it didn't seem like a big deal that there wasn't. It never bothered us to not have a lot of variety. And I don't think we got anything that much better when we ended up with 500 channels to choose from. What we ended up with was 500 channels worth of dumbed down crap that just honestly doesn't have the same character and depth and interest level to me that I remember from the shows I grew up with. Even as I was getting older, and like there were more channels, Nickelodeon came along, and the science-y channels came along, and those were kind of cool and everything. It seems like the more variety became available on television, it just seems like the quality started to drop. And I remember things that I liked to watch stopped being shown on the cable networks, and they started showing more soapy kind of things, more reality television kind of things. I remember when there were just a few, and then it seems like there were more and more. The Carol Burnett show disappeared, and there was the Vicki Lawrence show, and it wasn't funny. For anybody that was a Carol Burnett fan, Vicki Lawrence kind of got her start there. She was Mama from the in-show sitcom Mama's Family, which I think actually became its own show. You know, this is I guess this is my big problem with it, that it's become dumbed down, and it's become SJW preachy, and then children's television has changed dramatically in some ways that are kind of disturbing to me. When I was a kid, I remember, when kids shows would break the fourth wall, it didn't treat it like you were in a video phone call with the television show. It treated it like they were breaking the fourth wall to a television audience, and they would interact with the television audience, and you would be part of the television audience. Now you watch kids shows, and the characters talk to the audience, like the audience sitting in their living room, and pause and wait for the audience to answer and respond as if they heard the audience's response, and are replying to what the audience said or was expected to say. And it really does. It's almost like it's training kids to interact with the television the same way you would a video phone call. And it creates this impression that the characters are aware of the viewers and are responding to the viewers and are engaging with the viewers. The first one I saw doing that was Dora the Explorer, but there are several stations or several shows that do that now. It's like the theme now, and it's you'd want to call it lazy programming, except that it's Orwellian, and like right to the point where they do morning exercises. There's Disney shows that actually have the kids doing morning exercises, and they incorporate them into the activity in the show. Jump to get this thing that's on the screen. Run in place to catch this thing that's on the screen. And it's very clear what they're doing, and
Hannah,
and it's
sorry, I don't mean to butt in, but it's not programming, it's programming.
Yeah, it is. It's really creepy, and it's like, combine that with the social justice crap and the drama level that sort of gets you emotionally engaged with the television, and this treatment of television as an authority, like the Law and Order episode on Gamergate, which was intended specifically to give people this authoritative statement on Gamergate that people would take seriously and believe because it was on a cop show. That's very, very Orwellian, and it's. I don't know if I'm explaining this right, but it very much, watching television today, very much feels like instead of being entertained, you are being dumbed down, programmed, and jerked around emotionally. And it's no longer a positive thing. It almost feels like television, which was innocent when my mother was afraid of it, is actually becoming the monster that she thought it would be.
It's spreading circuses, Hannah.
Yeah.
It's spreading circuses. It's distract people enough so that they feel fine and complacent in their mundane, boring existence, so that they don't realize how screwed they're getting, how much they're being screwed, and how much the government is fucking them over, and just everything is fucking them over.
Or they think that things are popular opinion, like being okay with being screwed over by the government, or thinking that the things that the government is doing are not necessarily screwing you over, but are for your own good. And I'm seeing a lot of that in a lot of the drama shows and the popular TV shows, the sitcoms, everything. I even miss like campy, crappy sci-fi. One of the shows I followed, one of the last shows I actually regularly followed on TV that was not anime, was Lex. I loved that show. And it was just a stupid-ass show. But even that, the characters had more character in that show than any 10 shows where the characters now. And that's only been a few years ago. And it's it's gotten from, like, you can't have anything innocent anymore. Even like the innocent shows, even the innocent shows are still preachy and dumbed down. I can't even begin to describe, for instance, how disappointed I was after the first couple of shows in the first season of The Big Bang Theory. I was like, oh, look, it's a show about nerds. And then I went, oh, look, they're stupid. Great.
It's a show about nerds made by people who aren't really nerds that just happen to know enough about nerd culture to try to pass it off as a show about nerds.
Yeah, it's
That
nerd
actually
buzzwords.
insults nerds.
It's like every other show on television, but with nerd buzzword soup thrown in.
Yeah.
What the fuck?
And the thing that's really frustrating is it's like you're talking about with children's programming. They have significantly dumbed it down from when I was younger. I remember my parents used to think that what I was watching was so incredibly stupid, but looking back on it, people actually put in time, and there was a lot of writing in some of it. Like Batman the Animated Series, that was huge. That was tackling so many human problems in that show, and it was for kids. I mean, just going back over it, all of the complexities of it, they wouldn't make that show again today. At least not in the United States. Not really. And that's so incredibly sad, because you even see the comedy shows that were there for kids, and there are jokes in there that they managed to slip by censors because even they were so crafty about it.
Mm-hmm.
And they don't do that in this programming. They used to. There was a level of, I don't think you're really that stupid. I think you're just you're a small human that doesn't know as much as you could. But here's a way that you can get excited about learning. And now it's just a whole bunch of just. I don't even know what I'm fucking watching when I turn it on now. I mean, it used to be like.
You want to know something?
What the fuck is going on with this yo gabba gabba bullshit? What's happening here? I don't understand. I think they lost me at the Wiggles.
Television programming? Yeah. You want to know something about children's television programming? The most successful children's television program ever has been Sesame Street, right?
Exactly.
I mean, no holds barred, hands down. There's nothing that's ever been able to touch Sesame Street. You know what Sesame Street was actually based on? The format of Sesame Street was based on capturing the attention-capturing aspects of Rowan and Martin's Laugh-In. They did the same thing with the Electric Company. It was designed because that was a kid's attention span, and they used humor to impart the educational information that they were trying to get across. Almost the entire show, they used humor. Back when I was a kid, back when it started out, that was the formula that worked. There is nothing left of that in modern children's television programming. It's gone. That's it. I guess that's the end of my rant.
That was creepy.
Let's do the mic thing.
Yes, mic rant.
Oh, sorry. Mukul. That. Oh, how do you say your name again?
Say my name, bitch. Say my name.
Artist formerly known as Mike.
The artist, yeah, exactly.
Making the grunting sounds.
Just turn it into a symbol. I don't know. What would that symbol be?
That'd be even worse. No. I want you to say your name, Mike. Say it. Well, the artist formerly known as Mike. My apologies. But say it.
You know my name. Anyway, yeah, it's I've been I'm doing my thing where I sort of compose my thoughts in the background, and I'm going to try and sort of tie all this stuff together without basically repeating what you all have already said.
Oh, but just repeat it in your voice. It'll sound sexier.
Okay. Well, to some degree, what Andrew said earlier was right. TV is more about writers than directors, but unfortunately, just like the movies, the buck stops with the producer. Literally, the decisions come down to whoever's paying for it to happen, and those people answer to whatever mass social phenomenon will bring greater returns in that department. If I could tell you why TV sucks now, I'd be able to tell you why everything sucks now, because TV is more of a symptom than a cause. around the time the television set was famously not invented by John Logie Baird, it was emergent technology in whose tiny flickering window only the richest of the rich could luxuriate. As such, it was tailored to the richest of the rich. Only the poshest of voices and the tidiest of aging fops were permitted to grace its annals. And indeed, the people appearing on TV in the 40s were several notches less cultured, less refined, and less important than the people watching them. And that seems to be the standard they've been keeping to ever since. As the upper class bought TVs, they demanded to see clerks and bankers getting humiliated. And the middle class entered the market, and they wanted to see blue-collar slobs shake their fists at each other. And then the working class all got TVs, and they wanted to see tramps and criminals and useless, dysfunctional reprobates grievously dismembering each other. Now everyone is on board. A TV set is the price of a family bucket of chicken. The only things left in the schedule are the commercial jingle vestiges we call soap operas, the absurd tautologies we call talk shows, and the ongoing eternal oxymoron that we call reality TV. I mean, there's more choice than ever, but more of it is complete bollocks than ever. TV is not a luxury device or an essential tool of information technology. At this point, it's mainly just there to pander to the people who aren't too busy to watch shows on someone else's schedule. It's just an escapism machine with little or no actual sense of interactivity. And none of this is to blame anything on the masses or on class warfare or whatever. TV, like any public service, pertains to the people. It takes advice from constructive enthusiasts of the programming, and it takes complaints from people who very much get through their day by complaining about the things they choose to watch on television. This, comrades, is where I believe TV went wrong. I mean, back in the 60s and 70s, even as late as the 80s, when broadcast technology was still very shoddy and limited, programmers did whatever they were able to do. And it wasn't within their budget to make all the changes that the constructive critics requested, and it wasn't anything they were obliged to give a fuck about when it came to the Mary Whitehouses of the world. And yeah, part of TV's appeal, in a strange way, was that it didn't have many choices. If there's only 4 channels, you find yourself picking a channel and going, okay, I might as well try and enjoy this. And when you do that, you exercise your ability to enjoy things. So in a way, now that there are hundreds of channels, just the one thing that made TV work is now stretched thin to nothing. They give you more and more choices, and that only lowers your incentive to watch anything. And if choices are what you're looking for, the internet exists now. You have all the choices all the time. The internet is in the business of maximum choice. TV is in the business of minimal choice, and it's not even doing that properly anymore. And while TV became easier to make, the Mary Whitehouses of the world were not going away. If the posh, stuck-up neo-Victorian PC police had given up the ghost and gone home, TV might be awesome today. Unfortunately, as larger and larger masses of lower and lower class people flooded into the TV market, there was no shortage at any level of screeching couch potato fishwives of every class. And they were more than ready to take Whitehouse's place. Now, instead of a handful of insatiable complainers, we have millions of them. Except they don't complain that TV is too rude. They complain that it's too boring, too masculine, and too educational. And so now, whatever channel we turn to, we're looking up the holy water-soaked nether regions of famous people we've never heard of. So we go to the internet, where nobody gets bullied off the air. In theory. To be continued.
Your sublime rant, or I don't know if it was a rant.
To be continued.
That was amazing.
Saying the
yes,
end.
But it codified my thoughts about why TV sucks.
Yes.
And I apologize to the audience. Hey, good.
I'm
Codifying here is
I'm
happening.
glad I could codify. Wait, codifying's good, isn't it? Am I glad I could codify you?
It's clarifying and codifying, and I want to get this out. I want to get this out. So, shh.
What?
Squirrels settle. All
Do you
right.
understand the puns that are taking place here?
Yes, this is
And
ponder.
codified, and then there's
Things are being
visual.
codified. No, quiet, so I can regurgitate the codification.
Okay.
All right. I've realized why TV sucks. We're at the point where the moralizing has gotten to the point where people are basically in a straitjacket. So you either have to be so stupid you hit the ground, you throw yourself at the ground and miss, or you have to be so brilliant that you can actually continue to create a story while superficially abiding by the rules. So we're seeing a winnowing effect, and only the top, like, I don't know how many, like 1% of 1% of the writers can manage this feat, and then the rest just do reality TV. Is reality TV? I bet it is written, isn't it?
No, it's not written the same way regular TV is, but they do have people who write scenarios, and that was one of the issues with the last writer's strike. They were trying to get those people who write that stuff into the Writers Guild. I don't know if they actually did or not. But that was one of
They
the...
have us to contend with. The perpetually dissatisfied. You know, the perpetually, you're just not gonna watch, not gonna accept TV because it just doesn't have enough choice, and unfortunately for them, we're the future. So yeah, I feel for you, TV writers, but you because you have no spines and didn't stand up to the censors and the moralists, you are now being squeezed through the cheesecloth of outrage, and only the very best gets through. And the rest of you are going to be shit out of luck when nobody's watching TV anymore. And I'm going to stop there. What do you think, Brian? Is this a good place to stop?
Yeah, this is a pretty good place to stop.
I don't think we're going to...
Control-ish suggestion.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. There's a network called MeTV that caters to, like, the baby boomer and slightly older set that has, like, all the really old. It's got MASH, it's got the Carol Burnett Show, it's got The Rifleman, it's got, like, all these old shows on there from one specific network, I think. And, you know, it's the Brady Bunch and Happy Days and all that stuff. It would be hilarious to see what would happen if just a shitload of people wrote their local cable companies or the companies that control their local cable and asked them to carry it. Just to see if it would have any impact on programming. You know, if people were doing it enough, they'd have to consider the possibility that maybe people prefer older television shows for a reason, and it might influence what kind of stuff they're carrying on modern programming.
Yeah.
The only thing I was going to say is that what I miss, I think, most about television that I find is the most missing is a range of intellectual diversity within television programming. Like that's I think the thing I miss the most. Everything is trying to appeal to everyone, and it's doing a piss poor job at all of it. Yep. And that's the thing that I think is the most frustrating. There was a show that my mother loved, actually. It was called Hunter, and it was about this. It was a cop show, and it was about this. There was this male cop and his female partner, and in every episode there were shootouts, there were chase scenes, there was action, and it wasn't like it didn't have a story. But if you look up in one episode, I don't care which one, just pick a random one, doesn't matter. One episode of this show, Hunter, and this is not like an exceptional example. Like a lot of shows that were about police or, you know, crime or action, they had shows that were action shows that had like gunfights in them and stuff. Any of them from this time period, you would see action at the level close to what you would get out of a film. And this is like from many, many, many years ago. You would think that with the fact that, you know, we have like the special effects cost less money now, and we can get like stuntmen pretty easily. They're looking for work anyway or whatever, that we would get more stuff like this, and we don't get as much. But look up Hunter. Just look at one episode, random, and then look at how we do shows about cops now, where basically there's nothing until the last couple seconds, and then you have like, the threat of violence without violence, or you'll have something that really quickly wraps it up, and it's almost like you're just waiting and waiting and waiting and nothing happens. And that's basically what it's built on. It's this waiting game. Otter, you want to say something really quick?
Yeah. One of the things that has kind of frustrated me while being on here is that there's been a lot of generalizations made about just all the shows, and I'm somebody who always watches at least 3 shows every season. Sometimes it's been more than that. I always find stuff that's really good and that's really different and unique. So I don't understand what the problem is. It's like,
well, my point is this: I would never ever say that any of the shows. First off, there are good shows, and I know that they exist. You just have to look for them. But what my point is that the overall our standards are lower, a lot lower than they used to be. Even if you can find something, everything is just not as sophisticated as it used to be, or it doesn't take the work as seriously. There are exceptions that it certainly exist, but I think that overall it's just not as interesting. It just lost something. I mean, there are people in the chat that are mentioning shows like Sledgehammer. I remember that. Twin Peaks, that was really good. There's a lot of really good shows, and you don't have to like the same ones I like, but you see, the thing is that back in the day you had variety. Somebody who wanted to watch Dynasty might not be interested in Falcon Crest, or might not be interested in Magnum PI, but the point was that you had those choices. But we don't have those choices as much anymore.
Well, okay.
I think that everything's kind of fallen into this gray, dull, blob-like, what's the safest thing that's going to appeal to the most.
Problem with that, though. Because, when Police Squad, the show that eventually became the Naked Gun movies, when that was introduced back in the day, it didn't do well. It only lasted 6 seasons and was canceled. I'll try to do this quick. And the reason why that happened was because people used to not actually pay attention to what was on TV. They would turn it on, and it would be like a thing for them to listen to. And the jokes in Police Squad were not you didn't hear them; you had to see them. So people had really low expectations back then, and they didn't really even pay attention to TV usually. Now people are paying attention to TV, and I feel like people have higher expectations. So.
Okay, we got to wrap this up. Yes.
Okay. All right. That's fine. Let's wrap it up.
With my cheesecloth analogy, I'm saying that there's going to be a lot of crap, but I think that this particular time is when we're going to see some pretty sublime stuff as well, because these creators are going to be forced to be super creative about how they get their stories across with these restrictions. Okay, Rachel, why cheesecloth? Because it invites the cheese weasel. Okay, there you go. That's the answer. So anyway, to the people who have been listening, do you think that TV sucks? Do you think it's still good? Do you think it has a future? What do you think? And, give us your thoughts and your comments. I know Brian usually asks, but today I'll ask. And also...
You invite the cheese weasel, too.
Yes, yeah, indeed. No, the cheese weasel always has a place at our table. But...
Can I clarify something really quick?
No, you can't.
I said 6. I wanted to say 6 episodes, not 6 seasons of Police Squad.
All right. Okay. Yes. Thank you, Otter Jesus. So if you enjoy this show and you enjoy our approach, please do consider becoming a patron. www.patreon.com/honeybadgerradio. We're going places, and if you want to come with us, you are certainly welcome. We have a seat. We have a seat right by the cheese weasel. You and the cheese weasel can take this rocket to the future together.
Take our great space coaster into the future.
Yeah.
With the cheese badgers!
No, there are no cheese badgers. There's only cheese weasels.
Just for this episode with the cheese badgers. Fuck you.
Okay, alright. Okay, we're fine. Whatever.
Alright, I'm gonna go.
Yeah, just